Westfield University was alive with weekend energy, laughter spilling from dorm rooms, music pounding from frat houses, the streets packed with students eager to drown their stress in alcohol. It was Friday, November 3rd, at 11:45 p.m., and I sat at a dimly lit corner booth in the Hollow, the go-to college bar. My fingers drummed against my beer glass, eyes scanning the crowd. I wasn't here to party. I was here for answers. 2 months ago, Ethan Pierce, a guy I barely knew, was found drowned in the river. The cops called it an accident, thought I knew better, because Ethan wasn't the first. 7 men in the last 10 years. All drowned. All after a night out. And always near the same spot. And then there was the symbol. The smiley face no one wanted to talk about it. The school brushed it off as coincidence. The police didn't care. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was behind it. Tonight, I was going to find out. I had been nursing the same beer for an hour, waiting, watching. By 12:15 a.m. on Saturday, Dalo was packed. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Some shadowy figure lurking in the corner, watching me back? A stranger slipping something into an unsuspecting student's drink? But everything looked normal. Too normal. Then I saw in a guy, probably a freshman, swaying slightly at the bar. His cheeks flushed red from drinking too much, too fast. Alone. His friends had probably left without him. I leaned forward as a man approached the kid. Tall, hooded sweatshirt. Something about him felt off. He wasn't a student. His movements were too smooth, too intentional. The hooded man placed a hand on the kid's shoulder, leaning in to speak. The freshman nodded, laughed drunkenly. The man gestured toward the door. The kid hesitated. I stood. The moment the hooded man saw movement, his head snapped toward me. Our eyes met, and for the first time in my life, I felt preyed upon, my stomach twisted. My fight-or-flight instinct screamed at me. The man smiled. Not a normal smile. Wide. Too wide. And then, he was gone. Just gone. Like he had never been there. The freshman blinked, confused as if he'd suddenly forgotten what he was doing. He glanced around the bar, then stumbled toward the exit alone. My hands were shaking. I had seen something impossible, but I wasn't done yet. It was 1:38 a.m. when I stepped out of the bar. The cold November air bit at my skin, the warmth of the crowded bar evaporating in seconds. The streets were quieter now, the energy of the night fading into an eerie calm. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my roommate, Alex. Yo, where are you, bro? I ignored it. My phone was at 2% anyway. Instead of heading back to my dorm, I turned toward the river. The same path Ethan had taken that night. The pavement was slick with frost, and my breath came in heavy clouds. As I passed under a flickering streetlight, a sharp snap echoed behind me. A twig breaking. Footsteps, my chest tightened. I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. Just shadows stretching long under the dim orange glow of the streetlights. Then came the laughter. Faint at first, carried by the wind, but growing. Closer. Not a drunk college kid's laugh. This was wrong. Low, rasping, hungry. I picked up my pace. The river was just ahead. That's when I saw a figure, standing dead center in the path. Tall, unmoving. Hoodie pulled low over his face. My stomach dropped. I took a step back. The figure tilted its head, smiling. More footsteps. More shadows shifting between the trees. That I wasn't alone. My pulse pounded in my ears. My phone, dead. No way to call for help. Who are you? I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No response. Just that smile. Then they rushed me. I barely had time to turn before hands grabbed my arms, my jacket yanked tight around my throat. I thrashed, kicking, clawing, screaming, but there were too many. A bag was shoved over my head. The world spun. I was dragged, feet scraping against concrete, then dirt, then gravel, then cold, icy water. The bag ripped away and I gasped, lungs burning. My feet couldn't find the ground. I was in the river. The figure stood on the shore, watching. Motionless. Silent, Me limbs froze, heavy as the water pulled me down. My lungs screamed for air. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was a yellow, dripping spray paint on the bridge above me. No, I wasn't dying here. I kicked hard, pushing against the current, but my body was sluggish, numb. The water was freezing, my limbs already betraying me. I surfaced, gasping, but the figures hadn't moved. They didn't need to. The river would do the work for them. I went under again, my vision blurred. My mind screamed at me to fight, but the cold gnawed at my thoughts, turning them slow, distant. My ears filled with rushing water, drowning out the world. Then fingers, not mine. Something beneath me grabbing my ankle. I thrashed, pure panic surging through my body, but the grip tightened. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. A shadow moved in the depths. Something wrong, shifting, twisting in the blackness below. I couldn't see it fully, but I felt it. Something ancient, something that didn't belong in this world, and it was pulling me down. No! I kicked, teeth clenched, forcing every last ounce of strength into breaking free. The thing's grip slid, but not completely. My chest burned. My vision darkened. I wasn't going to make it. But then a sound, a scream, not mine, from the shore. The figures, the ones who had thrown me in, they were screaming, panicking. I forced my head above the water, gasping, and I saw one of them stumbling back, clutching his chest. Another was already gone, ripped backward into the trees. The thing in the water wasn't after me, it was after them. The grip on my ankle loosened. I didn't wait to understand why I swam. Hard. My body was shutting down, but adrenaline took over. I kicked, pushed, dragged myself toward the shore. The screaming had stopped. The figures were gone. I collapsed onto the frozen dirt, coughing up river water, my vision spinning. My fingers dug into the ground like I had to hold on to the world itself. Then silence thought I forced myself to look back at the river. The water was still out calm, like nothing had happened. But I knew better. I staggered to my feet and ran. It was 5:42 a.m. when I stumbled into my dorm. Alex shot up from his bed, eyes wide. Dude, where the hell? I couldn't speak. I just stood there, dripping, shivering. Alive, Dot, he stared at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was, Dot. I never told him what happened. I never told anyone. The police ruled it an accident, just like all the others. No one questioned why I never went near the river again, but I knew the truth, Dot. I had escaped. They hadn't, and beneath the bridge, the smiley face was still there, waiting. I thought I was losing my mind. It started with little things. Clothes missing from my closet, small items in my room slightly out of place, the feeling that someone had been in my space when I wasn't there. At first, I brushed it off. I was a junior at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, living in an off-campus apartment with roommates. Maybe I was just imagining things. Maybe my roommates had borrowed something and forgotten to put it back. But then the noises started. Late at night when I was home alone, I would hear soft rustling sounds coming from my closet. I'd stop what I was doing and listen, but as soon as I focused, everything went silent. I kept telling myself it was just the wind or the apartment settling. Still, I found myself double-checking that my closet door was closed before going to bed. Then one day, I came home and noticed something even stranger. Smudges on my bathroom mirror. They looked like fingerprints, greasy and smeared. But they weren't mine. Dot hadn't touched the mirror all day. My stomach twisted, but I tried to ignore it. Maybe one of my roommates had used my bathroom? Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts. The night I found him, it was a Saturday evening. My roommates were out of town for the weekend, and I was looking forward to a quiet night alone. I got home, dropped my bags, and kicked off my shoes before collapsing onto my bed. Then I heard it, Dot, a rustling sound, Dot, I was coming from my closet. My body tensed. The air in my room felt heavier. I glanced toward the door. It was slightly open. I always made sure to close it. My heart started pounding as I slowly sat up. I grabbed my phone from my nightstand and turned on the flashlight, my fingers shaking. Then I heard it. A voice. "Hey." I turned my flashlight toward the closet, and that's when I saw him. A man, crouching inside my closet. Wearing my clothes on, I was frozen. He sat there staring at me like he was waiting for me to say something. He was holding one of my bags as if he had been packing up his things to leave. And that's when I realized he had been living in my closet. I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because suddenly my legs were moving and I was running out of my apartment. I grabbed my keys and phone, barely able to dial 911 as I stumbled outside, shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone to my ear. The police arrived within minutes. They went inside, weapons drawn. When they came out, they had him in handcuffs. He hadn't even tried to run. His name was Andrew Swafford, a 30-year-old homeless man. He had somehow got into my apartment and had been living inside my closet. For how long, I'll never know. There were no signs of forced entry. None of the locks were broken. My roommates and I had no idea how he had been getting in and out. After his arrest, the police searched my room and found a cup filled with urine, meaning he had been using my closet as his personal bathroom. He had also been stealing my clothes and wearing them while I was gone. The scariest part? When they asked him how he had gotten inside, he refused to answer. Even though he was arrested, the experience haunted me for months. I couldn't sleep without checking every closet, every cabinet, every dark corner of my apartment. The idea that someone had been living in my space, watching me when I was home, moving through my things like they belonged to him. It made me feel sick. To this day, I still do doors are locked, my windows are shut, and my closet is empty before I go to bed. Because sometimes the real monsters aren't ghosts, they're the ones hiding in plain sight. I lived in an off-campus apartment with my best friend during my junior year of college. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small, outdated 2-bedroom unit on the second floor of an old brick building. The rent was cheap and it was only a 10-minute walk from campus, so we were willing to overlook the creaky floors, the occasional plumbing issues, and the unsettlingly dim hallway lights that flickered for no reason. For the most part, it was a quiet place. Our neighbors mostly kept to themselves, and aside from the occasional drunk student stumbling home late at night, nothing weird ever really happened. Until one night, something did. It was a Thursday evening, and my roommate and I were curled up on the couch, watching a crime documentary with the lights dimmed. The air was chilly outside, and we had the windows shut. I remember it was eerily quiet, no sounds from the street below, no music from the neighbors. Just a low hum of the TV. At some point, I got this strange feeling. You know that sensation you get when you can feel someone looking at you? The hair on the back of my neck stood up and my stomach twisted into knots. I brushed it off at first, convincing myself I was just getting too into the creepy documentary. But the feeling wouldn't go away. That's when I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something just outside our window. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, maybe a reflection from the TV. But when I turned my head to look directly at it, my stomach dropped. There was a woman standing outside our window. She was staring straight at us. Her face was pale, so pale that I could make out her features even in the dim glow of the TV screen. Her eyes were dark and hollow-looking, and she had this unsettling blank expression, like she wasn't really seeing us, just looking through us. She didn't blink. She didn't move. She just stood there. I felt paralyzed. My breath caught in my throat, and for a second, I couldn't even process what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. We were on the second floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, no ledge for anyone to stand on. Then, in a hushed, shaky voice, I whispered to my roommate, "Do you see that?" She turned to look at the window and immediately gasped. That was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't just my imagination. This wasn't some shadow or trick of the light. There was a real person standing outside our second-story window. The moment my roommate reacted, the woman suddenly ducked down so fast that it made my stomach flip. In the same instant, I shot up from the couch and scrambled to turn on the living room light. My roommate grabbed her phone and frantically dialed 911. I hesitated for a second before inching toward the window. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. Slowly, I peeked through the blinds. She was gone. I looked down toward the alley below, expecting to see someone running away. But there was no one there. The alley was empty, silent. There weren't even any footprints in the dirt below our window. By the time the police arrived, we were shaking. We explained everything, but when they searched the building, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no ladders or climbing equipment, no reports of anyone matching the woman's description. It was as if she had never been there at all. The officers tried to reassure us that it was probably just some drunk trespasser playing a prank, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. No one could have been standing outside that window. It wasn't physically possible. But that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Some nights we would wake up to find our closet doors wide open, even though we never left them that way. The kitchen cabinets would be slightly ajar in the mornings, as if someone had been going through them while we slept. My roommate swore she heard soft footsteps outside her bedroom door in the middle of the night, but when she checked, no one was there. Then came the tapping. It started about a week later. At first, it was faint, just a few light knocks against the glass of my bedroom window. I told myself it was probably just tree branches swaying in the wind. But then the tapping started happening only at night, and only when I was alone. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to a slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap against the glass. My stomach churned. My window faced the alley, the same alley where we had seen the woman. I turned over in bed and stared at the window, terrified of what I might see. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate, like someone was waiting for me to answer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just lay there, heart hammering in my chest, waiting for it to stop. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, it did. We moved out before the end of the lease. I still don't know what we saw that night. A stalker? A ghost? A hallucination? All I know is that we both saw her, clear as day. And I will never, ever forget that face in the window. I went to a university with a massive, old library, one of those buildings that felt like it had too much history. It had a basement that was used for archives, and most students avoided it. The lighting was dim, the air was musty, and the whole place felt wrong. But I was cramming for finals, and the basement was the only place I could find some quiet. That night I was alone down there, hunched over my laptop at one of the study desks between the bookshelves. The only sound was the hum of the AC and the occasional creak of the old building settling. It was peaceful in a way until I heard it. Footsteps. At first I barely registered them. The floors were old and sometimes the wood creaked even when no one was walking. But these were distinct, deliberate steps. Slow, steady and close. I glanced up from my laptop, expecting to see someone walking past, but the aisle was empty. I sat still for a moment, listening, my heart picking up speed. Maybe someone was on the other side of the shelves, just out of sight. That had to be it. I shook it off and tried to focus on my work. But the feeling didn't go away. You know that creeping sensation when you can just tell someone is watching you? It crawled up my spine, making the tiny hairs on my arms stand up. My eyes flicked back to my screen, but I wasn't reading anymore. I was hyper-aware of everything around me. And then I turned my head. At the end of the aisle, between the tall shelves, stood a dark figure. It wasn't walking. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there. Staring at me, I froze. The figure was featureless, more of a shadow than a person, but it was solid, too solid to be a trick of the dim lighting. I wanted to tell myself it was another student, but something deep inside me rejected that idea. I blinked and it was gone. Just like that. I didn't stop to think. My fight-or-flight instincts kicked in and I chose flight. I slammed my laptop shut, grabbed my bag and practically sprinted upstairs. My pulse was pounding in my ears by the time I reached the main floor. The librarian at the front desk gave me a weird look when I stopped to catch my breath. "Are you okay?" she asked. I hesitated, not wanting to sound crazy. Finally, I just said, "Was anyone else down there?" Her face changed. "Not that I know of," she said slowly. "Why?" I mumbled some excuse about hearing noises and left as fast as I could, but the whole night I couldn't shake the feeling of that figure watching me. The next day, I told a librarian what happened, expecting them to brush it off. Instead, they sighed and said, "You're not the first to see something down there." Years ago, a student had died by suicide in the library basement, and ever since, people have reported seeing something, a shadow, a figure standing between the shelves, or the sound of footsteps when no one was there. I never went back down there alone again.